BamaInsider.com, part of the Rivals.com network. We're a week away from National Signing Day, and I'm still adjusting to this December signing period coming right before Christmas. Have you made the adjustment yet?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. We're a couple of years in now, and it's starting to feel a little normal. People still ask me all the time, it's recruiting season. How crazy is it going to be over the next few months? I typically just tell them, I say, well, usually this February is just the crazy, December is the crazy month. It slows down completely in January, but a lot of that will depend on what happens over the course of the next week. Will Alabama only have maybe one spot remaining? Come February, will they be able to secure a lot of these guys and get everybody on board? Over the course of the next really the next 10 days, because there's at least I think there's at least one guy that's going to be announcing on Friday of next week. So it should be very, very interesting to see how this all unfolds.
Yeah, I know this. Your wife probably has told you get all your Christmas shopping done early December, because there won't be much going out to the mall for Andrew Bolden this next week. And I get the impression that Alabama and all these schools, you want to probably hold a scholarship or two, but it's clear, Bone, that the way this is going now, there's another signing day in February, but you don't want to go into February waiting on too many guys. The majority of the big program is going to wrap this thing up, at least 85, 90% of it during this month of December, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And, a lot of the kids want to get their decisions over with as well, because, they've been recruited for such a long time. I mean, a lot of these guys start getting recruited when they're sophomores in high school, and they've gone through the whole recruiting process. They've gone through all their official visits. They've taken, they've gone to they've done the in-home visits with coaches. They know everything there is to know by now. So because of the early signing period, it really has pushed, the recruiting calendars up for a lot of these coaches in terms of evaluating kids, getting kids on campus for visits, stuff like that. So it really does make it easier for these kids to just go ahead and make a decision in December.
Well, let's get to it. With Alabama, it's been they've been nonstop since the Iron Bowl in terms of recruiting. Let's start with Javion Cohen, the offensive tackle from Central Phoenix City, had committed to Auburn. Alabama got back in the picture, and I'm just reading your update on BamaInsider.com. I mean, what it sounds like to me, he's going to announce his decision and sign next Wednesday. And he told you in a text that one school isn't recruiting me anymore. Well, Alabama's still recruiting him. So, I mean, take it for what it's worth, but it sounds like he's going to Alabama to me, Bone.
Yeah, it does sound that way. I like Alabama's chances there. I'm predicting him to go to Alabama. But I think he's still trying to create a little bit of drama, because I did talk to some Auburn sources, and they are, Auburn has not officially shut things down with him, but they have continued to recruit him a little bit. But I think they will probably be the school that kind of backs down. And Alabama will kind of press on. And, Alabama really needs to get another offensive lineman in this class. They really like him a lot. Big kid, right at about 6'5", 295 pounds. They offered him back during the spring, but really kind of told him back in the spring, we want you to put some weight on before we kind of give you the green light to commit. He was about 260 pounds, when they saw him last, but was sick. I think he had mono or something like that, made him lose a bunch of weight. And now he's about, like I said, he's about 295 pounds now. They saw him during the season. He came in for the LSU game and then came in for the official visit this past weekend. And Alabama's really kind of pressed hard for him over the course of the last month. And, would be surprised if he ended up sticking with Auburn and not flipping to Alabama. So as of right now, I have him flipping to Alabama.
Let me ask you about Mckinley Jackson, the big defensive tackle out of the state of Mississippi. At one time, Ole Miss was really heavily involved, and now the coaching changed there. They seem to be on the outside looking in. I heard LSU for a long time. I know Auburn's made a big push, but It looks like this is going to come down to Bama, Auburn, LSU, and Texas A&M, although I still wouldn't count out Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin might could get in there with him and make up some ground. But you feeling anything one way or the other with this big mammoth run stopper at defensive tackle?
I'm starting to get some good buzz for Alabama. But the biggest thing with McKinley Jackson is he is going to wait. He is going to wait until February to sign his letter of intent. And so, as you said, I think Ole Miss can get back into the picture with him. They were certainly very high on his list for the old coaching staff was fired. And I definitely think that they'll get back in it at some point. But will they be able to make up enough ground, with some of these other schools that are very high on the list, like Alabama and LSU and A&M and Auburn? I'm just not sure if they're going to be able to do that. But it's definitely starting to hear some good things for Alabama. But I do think it will be a dogfight until the end. I think it's going to be very close. And, he won't make that decision probably until a day or two before signing day. So it'll be one to kind of keep an eye on. And we talked about how many scholarships are still going to be available, next month. And I think they're at least going to have one, and that one's going to be from McKinley Jackson.
All right, they'd love to get McKinley Jackson. Alabama also doing everything it can to hang on to Tim Smith, the outstanding defensive tackle from Sebastian, Florida. Florida has, they put a full court press on this in-state prospect. Alabama trying to hang on. What's the latest on Tim Smith, Bone?
Well, Tim Smith was in Tuscaloosa this past weekend for his official visit, and great time. He was in town with his mom, and they both really enjoyed it. Had just an unbelievable weekend back in Tuscaloosa. And I've been saying, the biggest thing with Alabama is just getting him back on campus and getting him back around the coaches and the players, and just kind of remembering why he committed to Alabama in the first place. And I think that really helps him in terms of making that decision. Now, he's still going to take an official visit to Florida this weekend, and they've kind of been, the only school that is has been a realistic threat to Alabama. But if I had to put my money down, I would say he's signing with Alabama next week. I really like Alabama in terms of him sticking with the Tide. Big need there. He really likes Alabama's development of defensive linemen. He notices all the NFL guys, like Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen and Ashawn Robinson and Quentin Williams, so on and so on. Darren Reed, he notices that and pays very close attention to it. So I think that really helped him in terms of making that decision a little bit easier. Yeah,
Alabama's known for sending those defensive linemen out in waves with their championship teams, and I know that's something they want to get back to. They want to get back to dominance up front on defense. He could help them in that quest. Another guy that could help a lot of teams, and you've done a terrific job, I think, Bone, of covering Jordan Burch, who's one of the best players in the country out of Hammond School in Columbia, South Carolina, 6'6", 255-pound defensive end. I say you've done a great job because you've been able to provide some updates even when he doesn't want to give anything out. He's been very consistent in terms of being quiet and not sharing much, but you've used all your sources and connections to get some info, and it appears, reading your update at BamaInsider, that Alabama's in this thing. And, in fact, you've got it down to Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. You think Clemson is on the outside looking in. LSU's still trying to get involved, and we know this year you can't count out LSU in anything. But with the limited amount of intel available on Jordan Burch, how are you feeling with him?
Well, I do think Alabama's a very, very strong contender here. I probably wouldn't have said that a month ago after his official visit because, it was just pretty quiet. There was just nothing really leaking. And his mom and him have done a tremendous job throughout this entire recruiting process of not leaking anything, not doing any interviews, just remaining extremely quiet about this entire recruiting process. So I think everyone, and we've said this many times on the show, nobody really knows what he's going to do. It's been all a guess. Everybody's saying, he's going to stay closer to home and go to South Carolina, or it's between Georgia and Clemson. LSU's having such a remarkable recruiting class that he's going to end up going to LSU. Well, I think everyone who's been saying that doesn't really know. And I think it's probably safe to say that, all these schools probably have a chance with them. But, when you really start to break it down, you start to talk to different people and try to figure out what's really going on and talk to people who've met with them and stuff like that. You start to get a sense of, who's really in this thing. And I think Alabama's certainly a major contender. They had a great in-home visit with him on Monday night. Nick Saban, Charles Kelly, I believe Salson Siri, Brian Baker, a lot of coaches went in and met with him and spent time with him, and I think that they've done everything they possibly can do to make him feel like he's a very important and vital piece to Alabama's recruiting class, and I think they've got a great chance to sign him next week. Now I do think Georgia's still in it. I think South Carolina, obviously being right there in Columbia, I think they're in it. I have heard some things that make me think that Clemson's on the outside, and just from talking to some sources at Clemson, it seems like they are, probably behind the other schools. Is LSU still in it? I think they are. I would not rule them out just yet. I have talked to some people who believe that if it were to, come down to, maybe some schools that are a little bit further from home, they think Alabama's ahead of LSU, but we'll see what happens. It's going to be very interesting because, as I've said, as many people have said from the very beginning, it's all been a guess with Jordan Burch. But that would certainly be a tremendous pickup for Alabama because they would really like to get another defensive end in this class, and he's been one of the guys they've recruited for such a long time, and I think they've done a really good job recruiting him. They're really not moving forward on any other defensive ends in this class. He's kind of the main guy that they want to get on board, and I think they've got a great chance to land him next week.
Yeah, he'd be what is known as a cherry on top if you can get a guy like that to cap off your recruiting class. Philip Webb, let's get the latest there on the outside linebacker from Sugar Hill, Georgia. I know Bama fans were hoping that the defensive coordinator Aranda at LSU would take that UNLV job. Didn't happen. Doesn't look it's going to happen. And he's really in tight with Webb. LSU's got to be the favorite here, Bone. And I'll ask you because you know more than me. I just don't see this guy from what I've read and been able to put together. I just don't see him winding up at Alabama. What do you say? Okay.
I think it's close. I really do. And listen. I've been saying LSU all along. Ever since he took that visit to LSU for the Auburn game. I think it was back in late October. It has certainly seemed all LSU for a while, but he did take that final official visit to Alabama this past weekend. I had a great interview with him on Sunday evening after that trip, and he had an in-home visit with Nick Saban last week, and Coach Saban, Coach Sal, those guys really laid out the plan for him, and I think Alabama's in it. I think it's a two-team race to the finish line. As you mentioned, Dave Aranda, I think that would really push Alabama over the top.
Yeah.
If he was taking that UNLV job, and you never know what may happen over the course of the next week. That just kind of popped out of nowhere yesterday with the UNLV talk. So you never know what may pop up tomorrow or today in terms of if he's going to be looking for or if a head coaching opportunity comes available for him. So that's something to really keep an eye on over the course of the next week. See if his name pops up even more, because we're seeing some there's a lot of defensive guys that are out there. Well, I say a lot, 3 or 4 guys that are out there that really trying to decide between Alabama and LSU right now. LSU trying to flip Demoy Kennedy and Philip Webb, Jordan Burch. There's some big names out there that they're really battling for right now. But I would not rule Alabama out at all with Philip Webb, because I think things have gone extremely well in terms of the in-home visits with him, and then the official visit this past weekend. I mean, Alabama does have some really good talent committed at the linebacker position, especially some good pass rushers. But they're really trying to, as you mentioned earlier, the cherry on top. Philip Webb would be the cherry on top in this class. But I think it's I think it's close. I really do.
All right, you mentioned Demoy Kennedy, and sometimes recruiting is as much about keeping the guys you got as getting late commitments. We know Alabama wants this kid. What an incredible athlete out of Theodore, been committed to the Tide for a while. But as you said, LSU has turned up the heat. Is Alabama going to hold on to Demoy Kennedy?
Hard to flip in-state guys.
Right.
Very hard to flip in-state guys. I think LSU has certainly, come in swinging. I think they've tried to do whatever it takes to flip him away from Alabama. But when he signs his letter of intent next week, I think he'll sign with Alabama. I think Alabama feels pretty good about where it stands with him right now, and LSU obviously has continued to try to recruit him, and they're going to continue to try up until the very last moment. But I think when he makes that decision next week, that final decision, I think he signs with Alabama.
All right, Bone, we know Alabama wants to get another tight end in this class. It seems to be down to Darnell Washington and J.J. Pegues, unless there's somebody else there that I don't know of. Is Alabama going to be able to get a tight end to put in this class to go with what they've got already?
Well, I think they certainly hope so. Unfortunately for them, Darnell Washington is not going to make a decision, or at least publicly announce the decision, until January the 2nd at the Under Armour All-American game. And J.J. Pegues is going to be announcing his decision on January the 18th. Alabama really only has room for one more tight end in this class in addition to Caden Clark. And I think they will wait to kind of see. I imagine they will wait to see what will happen with Darnell Washington. Now, can they maybe try to get an answer from him over the course of the next week? Maybe, but do you take the risk of getting him to tell you, and then a few weeks later him ending up signing with someone else? You just never know. But it's going to be tough to probably take J.J. Pegues next week, with Darnell Washington still out there. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I think things have gone pretty well with Darnell Washington over the course of the last month. Especially last week when Nick Saban went in home and did his in-home visit with him, and some coaches will be out there today or tomorrow to visit with him one final time, and before he makes that decision. So, I don't think he's a lot to go anywhere just yet. He took a visit to Miami this past weekend. He's going to Tennessee this weekend, and it's kind of a race to another one of those race to the finish line. Who's going to finish first? I think Alabama's strongly in it, and definitely laid out a good plan for him. And they feel like they've done everything they can to put themselves in a position to land his signature. All
right, Bone, we got like a minute, but Arian Smith, the wide receiver out of Lakeland, Alabama's worked hard to kind of get back in with him after maybe there was some miscommunication with him in terms of recruiting. This is a kid that can fly. Alabama going to wind up signing him?
Close. It's Bama-Georgia battle. He's going to Georgia this weekend, so that's always a little nerve-wracking when he takes that. When a recruit takes a final official visit somewhere else and makes a decision a few days later. But I think Alabama's done a great job with them, and it's close. I mean, I wish I could say yes, Alabama's in the driver's seat for this kid or that kid, but it really is a lot closer than and these battles are really tight. And it's going to be an interesting week to see kind of what happens and how this whole thing unfolds. But, there's definitely going to be some excitement next week for Alabama. Will they miss on some guys? I definitely expect that. There's just not a ton of room. Alabama can't take every single player. Now, obviously, they won't Arian Smith, but just overall, things are really tight. And they're probably going to have to tell a prospect or two no. One kid I'd really keep an eye on, maybe even this week, is Ronald Williams, four-star junior college defensive back. Going to have an in-home visit with Nick Saban today at the top of Alabama's recruiting board in terms of defensive backs. They want to get him on board so they don't have to kind of move on to a secondary option. So I think that there's a good chance we see Ronald Williams jump on board with the Crimson Tide in the course of the next week.
All right, Bone up against the clock. Jace Mcclellan, the running back out of Texas, Oklahoma commitment. Alabama flip him, yes or no?
Yes, I think he will.
Wow. All right, great stuff. Folks, get to BamaInsider.com. That's BamaInsider.com for all the great updates that Bone has. Also follow him on Twitter, and you can find him on Facebook as well. Thanks a lot, Bone. Great stuff.
Thanks, Gary.